is what we have been repeatedly telling when we discuss about the rotating frames. Now, after deriving the equation for Coriolis acceleration by almost by 3 methods, I think this statement would be the extract of whatever we have done. Newton's laws are applicable in non-accelerating, that is, inertial reference frames. Accelerating frames, either it's a linearly accelerating frame or rotational frames, which are non-inertial. Because they are accelerating, they will be non-inertial. Newton's laws are not applicable. In the sense, for example, in a rotating frame, like this, there is a disk which is rotating with angular velocity omega, and there is an absolute reference frame xy. You take two cases, there is an object A. If you think of this is a turntable which is horizontal and there is no friction whatsoever it is. Absolutely there is no friction. In that case, if I just keep an object over that, so for example, there is a rotating frame where the surface has no friction, it is quite smooth, I keep an object over there and spin this turntable, you will see that it will not be held in position, it will slip away. So if I want to keep this as a stationary object, what I have to do is, I have to tie a string. What is the purpose of tying a string? That string, if I think of a string which is attached to the center, then the purpose of the string is to give the force, the centripetal force, so that centripetal force will give the necessary centripetal acceleration. But as per when you are in a rotating frame, when things are rotating, you are part of the rotating frame. For you, the object A is stationary. But to keep this thing in a stationary position, I have to apply a force, net force. But whereas according to Newton's law, for an object to be stationary, I don't have to give any external force. Okay, net force required is only 0. Whereas in a rotating frame, it is not like that. So you see that it is not complying with Newton's law. Similarly, case 2, take an object which is moving in that rotating table with a constant velocity v. An object B move in a straight line with a constant velocity in a rotating frame. Then you have to apply an external force for that to move in a straight path with a constant velocity. That force is your Coriolis force. That provides a necessary Coriolis acceleration. Whereas as per the Newton's law, for an object to move in a straight path with constant velocity, you don't require any force. But what is happening in rotational frames? They are not obeying this. You require an external force to be applied. So, even if an object is stationary in a rotating frame, you require an external force to be applied. That is the centripetal force. Even if an object is moving in a straight line in a rotating frame, you have to apply an external force. That force is your Coriolis force. Okay? So this is the extract of whatever we discussed. So this is understanding which must get in to analyze objects which are moving relative to or stationed in a rotating frame. So any doubts? So you take down the statement and then go through, then we'll, yes.
Sir, like if you are observing A from the rotating frame, shouldn't we also consider the centrifugal?
A in a rotating?
No, we are also part of the rotating frame.
Yes.
And we are observing.
If you are in a rotating frame,
Yes, shouldn't we consider the centrifugal force also on A?
no, if you are part of the rotating frame, then what you observe is to keep the thing stationary, you have to give a force. Yeah. Centrifugal. There is, please let us not use the word centrifugal. Okay. So that is nothing but the reaction felt by the person holding the string. For an object, whatever force experienced by the object is just a centripetal force. Centrifugal is what you experience as a reaction. So we will not be using that word at all. What we will say is that is the inertial reaction. Okay? But popularly used as centrifugal. Of course, this is in a balance. I don't disagree. There is a balance. There is an action and reaction. But if you look at the object only, that object A experience only one force, that force is centripetal force. Okay? The other one is an inertial reaction that is felt by the person applying that action force. Any other questions? Now what we will do is we will take a slider crank mechanism and see how to draw the acceleration diagram. But before going to that, let us see, we are living in a non-accelerating, accelerating rotating frame. That is the earth. Earth itself is rotating. So whatever we have expressed here, even if you want to be stationary, there must be an external force acting. Okay, even if you want to stay in a position, there must be a centripetal force that should be given. Even if you want to move at a constant velocity, you have to apply a Coriolis force. But how we are managing this? See, we don't feel these forces, say centripetal force or the Coriolis force. The reason for that is these are very, very small in magnitude compared to the gravitational force. Okay? So how much it is smaller? Say for example, if I do the calculation, omega of earth is 7.26 into 10 to the power minus 5 radians per second. Then the centripetal acceleration is r times omega square. R approximately it is taken as 6,500 kilometers. So into meter is 1000 into 7.26 into 10 to the power minus 5 whole square. That is 0.034 meter per second square. That is 0.35% of the gravitational acceleration g. The centripetal acceleration that is required for you to be stationed is very small compared to the g itself. So g will satisfy the centripetal, it will give the necessary centripetal force. So the weight itself will be sufficient, so much larger than what is required. Then about the Coriolis acceleration, we have derived already. If you take the Coriolis acceleration, when it comes to the Coriolis acceleration, if you are moving at a velocity of 72 kilometers per hour, that gives an elegant 20 meters per second. Next class. So in this case, your Coriolis acceleration 2 times omega v will be equal to 2 into 20 into 7.26 into 10 to the power of minus 5, that is 0.0029 meters per second square, that is 0.029% of g. So that should be applied in a horizontal direction. So the friction force itself will take care of this. So even though we are in a rotating frame, we don't experience these forces, or we don't realize the existence of these. They exist, but we don't realize this existence of forces because the force due to gravity, the weight is much larger than these forces. Now we will take a slider crank mechanism and do the acceleration analysis. You want to talk? Go and sit with him. Take a slider crank mechanism. Now this is O2, this is A, this is B, this point is A, this point is say B. So we have done the velocity analysis. So the next one is the acceleration analysis. You are given the velocity omega 2, you know what is omega 3, and you also know what is its velocity. So this is link 4. Now you are either given an alpha or don't give the alpha, no problem. Even if the alpha is 0, you will see that the other links will have an acceleration. Acceleration will be there even if the alpha of this crank is 0. So how to start with the acceleration diagram in this case? It is O2 double dash. Now the point A, acceleration of A will have a normal component and tangential component. The normal component will be towards the center, so that is to be drawn like this. This is acceleration of A, normal component. The tangential component will be perpendicular to this, but incidentally the alpha is 0, so tangential component is 0, therefore this point will be your A double dash. Now you have to get the acceleration of point B. If we think of point B as a part of linkage 3, that is your connecting rod, it will have a normal component along this direction and tangential component along this direction. So rod will be the normal component will be along this direction. I can draw that So this is my acceleration of B with respect to A normal component. That I can find out because it is nothing but the r times omega square, that is the length B times omega 3 square, and the tangential component will be perpendicular to it. I can draw something like this. So this is where the acceleration of B with respect to A tangential component would lie, but I do not know what is the magnitude of it. Now take the next step, that is take B as a part of the slider. Slider undergoes rectilinear motion, so the acceleration of that will be along that direction only. So therefore acceleration of B with respect to O2 will be along this direction of the stroke, that is along the reciprocation line. So you see that it intersects here, so this will be my B double dash. So this will be my acceleration. This is acceleration of B. That means acceleration of B with respect to O2. We don't mention that O2, that is absolute. Now, what will be the direction of this tangential component? So you can see that this normal component and tangential component should give this component. So you will have this is your tangential component. Sum of the normal component and tangential component will give you this. So write the equation. You can know that acceleration of B is equal to acceleration of A plus acceleration of B with respect to A. So that you can write it as acceleration of A plus acceleration of B with respect to A normal component plus acceleration of B with respect to A tangential component. All of them are vector sum. This equation is a vector sum equation. So go by this. This tells you the acceleration of A, then acceleration of B with respect to A normal component plus this component gives you the acceleration of B. So this is how you get the acceleration of the slider. Any doubt? Repeat. Oh, this one. Okay. See, this is towards the center. It is the acceleration of B with respect to A. So then you have to take A as a rotating center. You have to imagine that as a center. So it will be towards this. The normal component will be towards this. The tangential component, I do not know the direction. I just draw a perpendicular line. Consider B as a part of the slider. Slider as a reciprocating motion. It's like a rectilinear motion. The acceleration also will be along that line. So I draw that horizontal line. They intersect here. This point is my B double dash. So taking O2 as a reference, then this must be my acceleration of B. Okay, because acceleration of B is with respect to O2 or absolute acceleration, it has to start from here. This is the absolute acceleration. So now the acceleration is towards this direction. Now if you want to know what is, whether this has to be in this direction or opposite direction, you can write this equation. So acceleration of B is acceleration of A plus acceleration of B with respect to A. Then acceleration of B with respect to A has two components, normal and tangential. So you have a normal component, then tangential component should give me this acceleration of B. So that is how I get this. Okay, so this is how you get, maybe you can draw this and get some marks and go. But that is not the case. What you should do, or what you should look at, is the kind of acceleration a piston is subjected to. In an automobile engine, I think all of you have a fair idea about the physical form of the connecting rod and how the piston is connected to the connecting rod. So this end is called the small end of the connecting rod. This is the big end of the connecting rod. You look at the small end of the connecting rod, there is a pin. That pin is called a gudgeon pin. Have you seen a gudgeon pin? This will be simply a cylindrical pin. How many of you have seen a gudgeon pin? Otherwise I will bring it. Only very few. The gudgeon pin, those who have seen, you could have make a gudgeon pin with a simple cylindrical steel shaft. But if you see the gudgeon pin, it will be given a mirror finish. It's extremely polished. So that means it's a tightly toleranced. The kind of a fit between the connecting rod and the pin is so close, there is no clearance. Why such a finish is required for the gudgeon pin? Why you need such a close fit here? The answer to that comes from the kind of forces that are being experienced by the piston and the gudgeon pin. The kind of force the piston experiences is due to the acceleration this is subjected to. So it all depends on what is AB, the acceleration. The acceleration of a common car, a car engine which is having a stroke of about 90 millimeter. Stroke is 90 millimeter. When the car is running, this engine is rotating, this omega 2, this is rotating at 3000 revolutions per minute. That's not a very high speed. It is a high speed but not very high. 3000 RPM it is rotating. Normally your car, when you go at probably 100 kilometers per hour, which is common today, if you have a RPM indicator of your engine will show that something like 3000. So this is quite normal. This is a common engine and it is running at 3000 RPM. The acceleration the piston is subjected to is 747 meters per, times G. That is 7,470 meters per second square. Or in terms of G, if you want to say, it is 747. It is easy to remember because there is a famous, jumbo jet which is 747. So the kind of a peak acceleration this the piston is subjected to is 747 times G. Now go back to the previous class. What is the acceleration required to kill a person? Almost 9G. What you are doing as the piston is concerned? Today if you want to build a guillotine, the guillotine was a machine invented to kill the authorities during the French Revolution because they want to execute so many people at a time in the fastest way. So people are asked to stand in the queue because of the French Revolution. You would have studied. So they required a machine to cut. Today I don't require such a machine. If I have a machine to accelerate a person, kind of a centrifuge, if I put it and then spin them to a very high speed so that your acceleration is more than 9 or 10 G, you will see that execution is done without any, any cut. So that is a cruel way. Now you can do it without that such a cruel way. But what you are doing for your piston, my God, you are really killing the piston. But understand, you are not only killing it, you are torturing it. What kind of torture? Let me tell you that this 747 G is only the peak acceleration. So the piston, what it is subjected to is 747 in the positive direction, go to 0, you have 0 acceleration, then 747 the negative direction. Suppose I say these are my two dead centers. So you have the BDC and TDC, two dead centers. The acceleration at the two dead centers are the maximum. In one, the acceleration is towards the center. The other also, the acceleration is towards the center. So what is the acceleration when it is at the piston is at the center position? It is 0. So within a cycle, it goes to one extreme, 0, other extreme. Then this happens 50 times a second. Not, in a slow phase. 3000 RPM means it is a 50 hertz, it is approximately 50 times 50 cycles. So what you are doing is you are getting the maximum acceleration, bring it to 0, maximum acceleration like this again and again. 50 times a second when it is a moderate speed of 3000. But what about your race cars? Race cars can go something like 19,000 revolutions per minute. That is why, in your regular cars and all that, the RPM indicator, there will be a red mark. Don't go to that red mark. So if you keep on increasing the speed, you don't have to do anything to destroy your engine. Automatically, due to the inertial forces, due to this heavy acceleration, the pistons will break into pieces. Okay? So the best way after learning this is, I am really, whenever I drive my car or your two-wheeler, I have to think that I am really torturing my piston to move from one place to other. So what I should be is, I try to be gentle, so not to press the accelerator pedal or not to run it at a very high speed. You have to be very gentle. So what the people are doing, some of them are, they take a two-wheeler, put the throttle, like that, it goes to 12,000 RPM, 10,000 RPM. You are really killing the engine. The torture level is peak. So from 747 for 6,000 RPM, it will be something like 1,300 Gs. So imagine, what do you mean by 747 G? 1 kilogram mass piston will experience something like 747 kilogram force. So imagine if you have a small clearance in your even a revolute joint over there, it will go and hammer, tongue like that, it will hammer on both sides, break into pieces. Okay? So that is what you are really doing to your internal combustion engine. When it is a low speed, it would not matter much, but when you go for higher and higher speed, really the speed itself will kill your piston. Okay? So it is not about just drawing the diagram and say come out with so many millimeters per second, all this thing. But you have to think what you are really doing to that object. Okay? So you have any questions?